To go.
Okay, welcome everyone. This is the regular meeting of the West Basin Engineering Operations Committee, as well as a special meeting of the Board of Directors. And we're convening today, Wednesday afternoon, on October 12th. So first item up is call to order. So, Mr. Assistant General Manager, can you do a call to order, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. I did really want to quickly point out, obviously, the general manager is not here today. He is online and he is joining us from New Orleans. So I wanted to point that out. Also, I'll have our board administrator, Julie Fraser Matthews, administer the determination of quorum.
Thank you, EJ. Director Williams,
Here.
Director Deere,
Here.
Director Gray,
Here.
Director Houston, Director Houston, and Chairman Alvarez.
Here.
Thank you. We do have a quorum.
Okay, do we have any public comments?
Chairman Alvarez, we have not received any requests for public comment. However, I do notice that we have several phone numbers joining us remotely. If you would like to speak during public comment, please let us know now.
Okay, so hearing none, we'll move on to presentations. I don't believe we have any, but can we confirm that?
That is correct.
Right, so the next item up is the action calendar. The first item is the approval of purchases sponsored by the Benson Park. Get a briefing on that particular item.
Yes, and for this presentation under item 5A, which begins on packet page 4, we do have Susanna Lee, our senior operations engineer.
Thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. This item has to do with procurement of UV lamps that are being used at ECL. If you can turn to page 4 of your package, I'll begin with my report. As you all well aware that West Basin is required by the state regulations to use the UV ultraviolet lights to disinfect our recycled water for our berry injection purpose water. If each of these UV lamps has a certified life of approximately 12,000 hours, which is about 16 and a half months of usage if they're being used full capacity. And it is required by the West Basin regulatory permit to be replaced within this time frame. And these UV lamps were last replaced starting in September of 2020. And due to the barrier shutdown in 2021 and the extended influent water quality upset, barrier system was shut down, and staff revised the original replacement date and is forecasting that the lamps will approach that 12,000 hours beginning January 2023. UV lamp procurement normally has a 3 to 4 weeks lead time. And due to the current supply chain and shipping constraints, the vendor has informed West Basin staff that the lead time is now at least 6 weeks out. So to avoid any delays in receiving the lamps, prevent deficiencies and violations, West Basin staff is recommending procuring the UV lamps at this time and maintaining a minimal spare lamp inventory. And as the memo detail, Trojan UV system was selected as the UV system back in 2004, and it is required that we use the Trojan lamps for replacement. And as part of the original proposal, West Basin was given a guaranteed price of replacement lamps, which was based with a starting price of $100 per lamp. And with the adjustment of CPI, the UV lamps is currently $151.65. So in addition to the replacement of the 1,200 lamps, West Basin will need to replace some ancillary parts and including O-rings and lamp sleeves due to the normal wear and tear and some corrosions that happen due to the extended shutdown time. So the total estimate of these parts is $18,574.92, and the 1,200 lamps, total for the lamps were 100, altogether were $217,843.02. So with that, I will read the recommendation that the board authorize the general manager to issue the purchase order for 1,200 Trojan UV lamps and ancillary parts from Trojan Technologies for a not to exceed total amount of $217,843.02.
Okay, thank you. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
Oh, none. Bark have, he's okay with this. I have none.
It's Director. I'm certainly okay with this. It's needed for our barrier production, and we're basically tied to an agreement that we entered into and tied with regulations that we have to purchase these particular lamps. So yes, I concur with the recommendation.
Very good. Thank you. I have none. Thank you.
Any of the other board members have any questions or comments?
No.
I have a question. How often are these lamps replaced?
The life of these lamps are 12,000 hours, operating hours. And if they were operating at full capacity, that would be about 16 and a half months. So original, if based on installation date of September 2020, they would have been needed to be replaced March of 2022. So.
All right, that was my only question, kind of what the lifespan of the lamps are. Thank you.
Okay.
With that, you want to move this forward to the board for approval for the recommendation?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so moving on to the next item, which is an order of 90 M10C microfiltration submodules. We can have a report on that.
Happy to do that, Chairman Alvarez. And again, this item is 5B. It begins on packet page 11. And for this presentation, we again have Susanna Lee, our Senior Operations Engineer.
Good afternoon again. And so this item is regarding to purchase of some new pressurized polypropylene MF membranes for our satellites. So these are for the older MF systems at our satellites. Between the two satellite plants, JMM and Torrance, TRWRP, West Basin utilized about 1,350 these polypropylene MF membranes. And these are the older systems to produce the boiler feed water for both Marathon and PBF refinery, respectively. And these older polypropylene MF system, unlike the newer PVDF MF system at ECL, they cannot be subject to the more rigorous cleaning methods and harsher, I would say, harder chemicals. So they're prone to fouling easier. And in addition, these hollow fibers are under pressure all the time. So the cracking within the epoxy potting material holding the fibers together can be cracked and needs to be replaced. And additionally, these aging MF systems have been operating beyond the original design criteria, as I mentioned previously, and are developing cracks at the manifolds and the center tubes. So these all impact the overall microfiltration water quality. And if you recall, West Basin staff procure and replace all of these 1,350 membranes between 2020 and 2021. However, because of the Hyperion upset, the health of these modules have been severely being impacted due to the less than ideal water quality that we send from ECL to the satellite facilities. So Veolia staff have been repairing membranes or repinning. That's what we call repairing the membranes. And these actions are really labor intensive and it takes a lot of time. And when we take, depending on the location of these modules, whether it's outside versus the inside modules, it takes a lot more time and sometimes it will risk of making additional damage. So in summary, we've been replacing more than normal the number of modules this past years. And leakage from these broken fibers as well as these cracked modules really compromise our water quality that's sent to our customers. And it ultimately also affects the RO performance, our membrane life. When our water quality is compromised and resulting in exceeding of our customer requirement, then a lot of times we have to supplement with potable water, imported potable water, and then that's being used as makeup water to feed the RO system. So at this point, MF replacement will be needed and will help to bring down the cost of cleaning and minimize the use of potable water. And staff is here to request that West Basin purchase about 90 modules to help replace some of the needed membranes that already have many pins been done on them. And as mentioned back in 2020, these older polypropylene Evoqua membranes are of proprietary nature and can only be replaced with the Evoqua/Fimtech membranes. So West Basin did have a long-term pricing agreement beginning in 2009 and was renewed in 2017. The negotiated price with adjusted CPI currently is $859.73 per module. And for your reference, without the long-term pricing agreement, the current unit price for the M10C module is about $950 per module. There is currently a long lead time for these modules and they're being procured and manufactured in Australia. And we're not able to get these until February 2023. So it's pretty pertinent that we put in the order now so then we can get them by February. In the meantime, staff will have to continue to pin and repair the current modules. Anyway, with that, I will read the recommendation that the board authorizes the general manager to issue a purchase order for 90 microfiltration submodules from Fimtech Corporation for a not to exceed total amount of $87,768.18, including shipping and sales tax. With that, I can answer any questions.
All right, we'll see if we have any questions. Director Williams.
No, thank you.
Director Williams doesn't have any. How about the other board members?
None
No,
here.
thank you. No, thank you.
Okay. So I have kind of a similar question. What is the typical rate of replacement for these?
Yes, I have some data for you. So back in 2020, when they were almost to the end of their life, our pinning, the average pinning was probably 1 or 2. That was like at the end of
5 years.
yeah, 5 years. And last year, at the height of Hyperion upset, we're averaging about like 5 to 10. And then this year, we're seeing like 17 or 20, up to 20. And in terms of replacement, I asked for replacement. In 2020, that was toward the end of their useful life, we replaced 95 altogether. This year alone, at Torrance alone, we replaced 110 already. So we've used up all the spare inventory. We're down to 2. We're really selective in which one next that we can replace. Right now, it is really impacting our water quality. We are talking to Evoqua to see if they can make any adjustment in terms of manufacturing capability to speed up delivery of these 90 modules to help us to get back to water quality, to make water quality requirement.
But the typical life of the membrane, we
It's
replace the filter and the cartridges every 5 years, typical.
4 to 5 years.
45 years. It depends on the water quality, so
Right.
yes.
And right now, you're accelerating that, and so I just want to, it looks like 2.5 years, is that about it? So they're about half the life of their expected life of service life.
Correct.
And that is due to just the water quality?
During the Hyperion upset, our normal ferric dosage is like 50 to 60. We were consistently using up to 120, 100 to upward of 120 of parts of ferric at the ECL. What does that do to our satellite? That means we have a lot more iron going out to our satellite facility. So what we want to see out from ECL is about 0.5 ppm of iron leaving our plant at ECL. We were seeing up to 2.5 parts of million ppm of ferric, well, iron, not ferric, in our Title 22 water going to the satellites. So with this amount of iron, we see iron fouling and scaling in our membranes. So that really severely impacted all our membrane performance on those 2 plants. So unfortunately, that was right before, like we replaced all those membranes right before the Hyperion upset. So that unfortunately, like we were hoping that, that will last another 5 years, but yes, it does. It did impact our MF life, I should say.
Seems like a pretty significant impact, that hit the life by 50%.
I mean, so we're pinning, and so not all of them are like, quote unquote, like end of their useful life. But with more fiber breakage, those pinning actions or the repair is really labor intensive. Like I said, you actually literally put a pin through those hollow fibers. So, and then you have to remove those modules if it's inside. If you know those M10C system, you have at least 4 or 5 rows, and then you have to move them out. And so it's very labor intensive. So at some point when we determine that there's enough pins, more pins and man hour to repair those modules, it is best to just replace rather than do pinning.
So how's the determination of the labor? I mean, who does that?
Normally, if we see more than 25 pins, we know that it's not recommending doing pinning, and then we would recommend replacement.
Who does that?
Who determine if there's more than 25 pins?
Who does the pinning?
Who does the pinning? Oh, Veolia staff.
It's Viola's contract. And in their contract, do they have a performance measure for maintenance of the membranes and how many hours are expected?
And nothing prescriptive is being written in the contract.
So it's very general maintenance.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah. Are you referring to our contract with Veolia
Well,
or?
that's the only contract I would assume.
Yeah, there's other types of performance related, but not specifically for this one.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of lacks some performance standards.
Well, we do,
Well-
despite what's in the agreement, the performance monitoring happens all the time between both from Veolia and us. Okay.
Thank you. All right, so given that, looks like probably at this point, you need to replace that. Are you, okay with moving this forward?
Yes. But I have a question.
Go ahead.
I didn't do very well in chemistry. And I heard, I'm thinking back when I was in the Army and we had these big dumpsters outside of our shop and it had a stencil on it that said ferrous metals, non-ferrous metals. So I always thought ferrous had something to do with iron, but you were saying that there's a difference. Did I hear you wrong?
The ferric chloride is the chemical that we use to do coagulation process with a disinfectant tertiary process. So the iron, the residual iron that left in the water that make it down to the satellites is of a different form. So there's different forms of iron. So the ferrous normally will create the balance that we would not prefer in the water. And with the heavy use of the ferric chloride, we will see a lot more of those form of iron in the water.
So that iron is not some kind of iron that we would use. I mean, that is just waste.
The residual, yeah, what is left not being processed through the filters.
Well, like I said, I didn't do very well in chemistry, so thank you. Thank you.
It's just a form of iron. Simple answer. Okay, then we'll move on to the next item, which is the facility, the alarm control panel replacement in addition of electronic backflow valve supervision at the NC Little facility.
Yes, Chairman Alvarez, for this item 5C, which begins on packet page 17, we do have Jason Kung, our operations analyst 1, for the presentation.
Take it on, Jason.
Thanks, EJ. Good afternoon, directors. So West Basin's insurance carrier through the Joint Power Insurance Agency, or JPIA, contracts with STAR Technical Risk, STR, to inspect our municipal industrial facilities for insurance carrier information and also for loss prevention. Back in April this year, STR, on behalf of the Association of California Water Agencies, ACWA JPIA, they outlined loss control recommendations noted in attachment A, which is page 20 of your packet. There's no need to turn there, but it includes two important recommendations. One is the replacement of the current non-indicating gate valves on the two water supplies connections and replacing them with outside stem and yoke gate valves. It allows for a quick and easy visual confirmation of the position of the valve just by looking at the stem. And the second is a recommendation also to include electronic valve supervision to the aforementioned gate valves. The implementation of both of these recommendations will require the replacement of the fire alarm control panel at ECL to reduce the risks from loss of property by fire. The required response to STR was submitted on September 30th of this year, notifying STR that the procurement of these measures would require board approval. To give a little bit of background on the fire alarm control panel, it monitors all the smoke detectors, all the pull stations, all the fire announcing devices such as audible alarms, strobe lights in not just the admin building, but all throughout the facility. West Basin solicited a proposal from Johnson Controls Fire Protection, the sole servicer and manufacturer of this proprietary system, to replace the FACP. Staff investigated the option of seeking other contractors to provide a similar type of service. And quote, but because the entire system is a simplex system owned by JCFP and is the only vendor authorized to perform this kind of work for the system, other like vendors decline to work on the system due to the proprietary nature of these components. A sole source letter is included for your reference in your package starting at page 25 as attachment B. Staff also looked into the alternative to replace the entire fire suppression and entire monitoring system extending throughout the facility with a non-proprietary system. But it would take, an extended period of time, multiple months, with cost predicted to be more than $1 million. JCFP submitted, two cost proposals included as attachments C and D on pages 26 and 38 of your packet respectively, to West Basin for the panel replacement and valve supervision implementation in the total amount of $112,000 and $112,060. In order to stay in compliance with the recommendations presented by STR and to avoid district liability through threats to life or property, staff recommends that the board authorizes the general manager to enter into an agreement with Johnson Controls Fire Protection for the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility fire alarm control panel replacement and the addition of electronic backflow valve supervision in the amount of $112,060 plus a 10% contingency for a not to exceed total amount of $123,266. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Williams,
No, thank you.
any of the other directors, board members,
No,
have any questions?
no, thank you. No, thank you.
Okay. I don't have any questions. So with your concurrence, Director Williams, we'll move this item forward also.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next item up is materials testing and
Somebody at the door, Gene?
inspections.
Somebody at the door?
Director Deere, if we could mute your microphone.
So the next item is the materials testing and specialty inspection services on call contract. If you can get a report on that.
Yes, happy to do that. This next item is item 5D, which begins on packet page 49. And for this presentation, we have Veronica Govea, our engineering supervisor.
Good afternoon, board members. This is in relation to the Palos Verdes Reservoir project to request authorization by the board to amend agreement with our existing on-call material testing and specialty inspection services company. As you guys might recall, at the September board meeting, the Palos Verdes Reservoir pipeline project, including pipeline and pump station, was approved to become and to follow basically follow the project labor agreement requirements that West Basin currently has with the Los Angeles Orange County's Buildings and Construction Trades Council and the signatory craft councils and unions. This PLA was signed in July 2014. And in order to comply with the requirements of the PLA in 2016, West Basin entered into an agreement with the Smith Emery to basically be able to meet the requirements that the PLA requires for specific characteristics regarding the crafts. So typically, construction management includes material testing and specialty inspections, but because the construction managements typically tend to be professional service, they do not fall they don't fall into the PLA. So for the same reason, with having a third-party contract with a specialty construction material testing firm, West Basin is able to meet those requirements on the PLA. The PLA, it's important to notice that the PLA limits the number of inspectors that can be employed, and also it requires like fringe benefits to be paid directly to the union throughout the duration of the work. So that's something that construction managers teams typically cannot do or meet. So for the same reason, becoming the Palos Verdes Recycle Water Pipeline Project, a new project to follow PLA, staff is recommending to enter, to amend the contract that we currently have with Smith Emery to perform these services. Smith Emery has already completed 3 projects, one being a pipeline and the other one being a little bit more like a facility structure type of work. And currently they're working on the Juanita Mallender Phase 2 expansion project. West Basin requested a quote to do this particular work on the Palos Verdes project. Again, this is pipeline and pump station. And their quote became $151,702. Sorry, can see well. So with this, I will read the recommendation. Please note that as part of the attachment, the quote has been included on this board item. So the recommendation reads that the board authorizes the general manager to amend agreement W2664 with the Smith Emery Company to provide on-call material testing and specialty inspection services for the Palos Verdes Recycled Water Pipeline Project, which is pipeline and pump station, in the amount of $151,702, plus also a 10% contingency, which is consists of $15,170 for a new total contract amount of $506,613. With this, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Williams, do you have any questions?
None here. I don't see anything out of the ordinary.
Any of the board members have any questions?
No, thank you.
And Director Deere, if I could point out that we did mute you on our end. So if you'd like to unmute yourself, you'll have to hit *6. Okay. Sounds like you're off mute. So if you have anything to add, please go ahead.
Apparently not. Okay, so I have just a question or two. We're doing two actions here, basically amending the PLA to include Smith Emery.
No, it's only one action item, which is a change order approval for Smith Emery for an additional $151,702 plus a 10%.
It's just, that's the only action. You talked a lot about the PLA, so it's just.
Oh, yes. What happens is the PLA has a specific requirements in regards to crafts and types of inspectors, the number of hours, and which specialty basically goes to the field. And because of that, those are requirements of the PLA. So construction managers typically have one, their main inspector that will do that. So typically those services don't fall very easily into PLA. For the same reason, West Basin has this third-party company basically meeting the requirements of the PLA, which in the construction process basically becomes a component of the construction team, which is in constant coordination with our construction management to come in and do the inspection or do material testing on whatever area they need to be working on.
So then going back to just the amendments, basically the inspection services and testing services for the Palos Verdes Recycled Water Pipeline is going to be about $151,000.
It's the pipeline and the pump station.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Are you good with
Mr.
moving
Chair.
to full?
Hello?
Yes, Director Gray, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm sorry, I do have a question. It actually is a request, if the committee agrees or the board. I'd like to review the language that we have with our PLA agreement. I think we have an umbrella one. So I wondered what it was like. I can't remember it because I think we've had it for a while, and how it relates to local hiring and how that is part of the agreement. So I'd like to ask the staff to bring back the language just so we can kind of review the contract we have with the unions as it relates to PLA. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. So maybe what we can ask for is that this item, the amendment to the agreement, the on-call agreement with Smith Emery, be brought back to the board for the recommendation, and a separate item on a status report on the PLA be presented to the board. Would that be satisfactory, Director Gray?
Yes, as long as it includes the language that we have, the agreement language, so the board is fully aware of what that language is and what it actually means. Thank you.
Do you have any questions, staff?
Chairman Alvarez, let me clarify. Staff would obviously be happy to email out that agreement. That agreement is a public document. We could provide an overview within that email, just providing kind of an explanation of the agreement. And as such, we'd be happy to discuss that at a future committee meeting or a board meeting. So depending on your preference, we could bring it back any way you'd like.
So Director Gray, would you be satisfied with just getting an email with a narrative explanation and a copy of the PLA? Or would you appreciate, in addition to that, having it for discussion with a more formal presentation at the board meeting?
Exactly what you said. Maybe the discussion can be had more at the committee meeting, but certainly the documentation be sent out to the board. But I would like to have a discussion about reviewing that language because I really would like to discuss with the board whether or not there's some apprenticeship programs attached to that, or training, or local hiring. How is that being done? Is it by zip codes? It's more targeted local hiring. So I would like to have that discussion. I suggest that discussion to be had at a committee meeting, and as well as the information be sent out through an email in summary of the contract, please.
Director Williams, go ahead.
A question, would this be required before we go forward with this project?
Well, I'll go back and defer to Director Gray. I think she wants more of an informational item on the requirement of the PLA. And she may want to have it before the project gets started.
Yeah.
Next year. I think it's going to start next year, beginning of the year. So, Director Gray, is that pretty much, you would like to see this information sooner rather than later?
Yes, that's true. That's true.
Okay,
Okay, so
Thank you.
if you could send out the kind of explanation, I think the focus is on local hiring. There's a lot to the PLA, but if I understood Director Gray, and Director Gray, feel free to expand further on it. You're really focusing on the local hiring component? You'd like to understand that
Local
better?
Yes, local hiring, training, apprenticeship programs, those kinds of issues. I would like to see if that's something that makes sense as with the agreement that we now have with them. So that is really my interest.
And Chairman Alvarez, I do see that our general manager, Gregory Reed, has raised his hand, so I'll throw it over to him.
And thank you, EJ. Thank you, Director Alvarez, for giving me a moment to just chime in and say that I think it's a great opportunity for us to highlight the PLA, as Director Gray has asked for, recognizing that the Metropolitan Water District recently approved applying project labor agreements to their upcoming construction program, estimated about $1 billion. And so it certainly is a great opportunity to highlight the value and the success that we've had with PLAs, but also getting into the more targeted areas of how it works for us and the local hiring that we've been able to accomplish through that mechanism. And I'll repeat, what I think is remarkable is being able to reach at-risk workers. These are people who may have had, impact with the criminal justice system, and being able to gain work reentry and gainful employment among, the many other folks who may have various disadvantages. And the PLA program being able to bring on board those various demographics. So I think it's great. And I would presume, and this is an assumption of mine, that we would bring this forward in the next E&O committee, since it's being asked in this E&O committee.
That would be fine, but let me defer back to Director Gray. Director Gray, if you'd like to see this in a little more accelerated basis, this could also be evaluated at the Finance and Administrative Committee meeting, and I believe that meeting's coming up. So if you'd like to wait, if you wait for the next E&O committee meeting, it's a month.
away.
Wait for the next Finance and Administrative Committee meeting, it's a week.
Yeah, well, thank you for suggesting that, and I totally agree. I would like to compensation to be had as soon as possible. So thank you for suggesting that way of doing it. So I totally agree with you. Thank you.
Okay, so,
Chairman Alvarez, it's important to note that the FNA, the Finance and Administration Committee agenda is already posted. So we would need to pull that down.
It's not posted yet. It will be posted tomorrow.
Oh, it'll be posted tomorrow. In order to allow staff, obviously we can get the current agreement with, and I believe we have, when we entered into that agreement, we put together a presentation that kind of walks you through that. So I'm thinking that we wouldn't have to recreate the wheel. If you'd allow us to bring that back at the board meeting, that would allow staff to do this. We could actually attach it as an additional information item and present that agreement, walk through that for the director's review.
fine. If that makes it more convenient, the next board meeting, and still be sooner than a month. Is that okay with you, Director Gray?
I'm sorry.
Director Gray, did we lose you?
Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry, I
Okay.
muted myself. Yay.
Okay.
So we'll have that prepared for the board meeting as an information item.
You might want to do it as an action item, just in case that somebody wants to make some adjustments to it, and the action can be taken, as opposed to try to move it from, we can always, I guess, move something from the information to the action calendar, but if you put it on the action calendar, there's no action necessarily need to be taken, but it provides the option of doing that.
I'll work with our general manager and we'll make sure that we bring it forth accordingly.
Okay, with that, if there's no other comments, we'll move on to the next item. And the next item is the recycled water filling station implementation of the program. So if we can get a report on that one.
Happy to do that. And this item is on your agenda is item 5E, the recycled water filling station. This does begin on packet page 56. And I'll be handling this presentation. And we do have an assortment of staff and of course our leadership, general manager available for any questions that you might have. In September, West Basin's staff did bring back a oral progress report on West Basin's or at West Basin's Engineering Operations Committee to report back on some of the findings that we found as far as pursuing a recycled water filling station. At the request of the committee, we did bring that back on September 26th with a board memorandum action item, actually seeking feedback, but also contemplating a specific action plan to bring back in November. And so staff has been meeting. We did create an internal working group. We've held 2 meetings accordingly, and then kind of a third one today, as well as working towards the future. You can see what was summarized, of course, in that board memo on September 26th. At the direction of our chairman, Director Alvarez, he did ask for staff to bring this back as an additional action item for this committee. He did ask for this to be brought back for additional input from the committee and board to the general manager regarding the implementation of the recycled water filling station. So with that, I'll throw it over to our chairman for additional feedback.
Okay, you had some exhibits and so on in the material that you sent out. Do you want to go over those, or is that something that's there for?
I'm happy to do this, and really what this contains, of course, our engineering team put together the first 2 slides. That's why they look so much better than the others. But I wanted to highlight this because what we've been doing is actually working on a phased approach, obviously, to incorporate a recycled water filling station at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility is perhaps the easiest aspect of doing this. But of course, at the direction of the committee and board, we are contemplating additional potential remote sites within the West Basin service area and within the delivery system of the water recycling system for the potential to do additional filling sites. So you can see that phased approach there on packet page 59. If you turn the page, you can see on packet page 60, some of the contemplated aspects of having a recycled water filling station at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility. again, trying to find a way to implement this as best as and cleanly as possible. You can see at the bottom of that side, we do have what we would call a conservative calendar as far as what we anticipate happening. It's important to note that we're moving as fast as possible. We would like to get this done much sooner, but this would be a conservative approach. If you turn to packet page 61, it's worth noting that this committee and the board did identify potential local sites for a water bottle filling, or excuse me, a recycled water filling station. And so on packet page 61, it was mentioned that the Juanita, Milano, McDonald, Carson Regional Water Recycling Facility could house one. If you turn it to packet page 62, this is Lago Seco Park in the city of Torrance. And so that was identified as a potential option. And then on packet page 63, you'll see the Torrance Refining Company. It was requested that staff look at this satellite facility as a potential location for a recycled water filling station. And with that, I would note that West Basin staff has begun discussing this, the prospect of actually partnering. Clearly, we identified that the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power would be a great partner, but we also have initiated conversations with the city of Torrance as far as potential sites and locations. And while they did appreciate the discussions of these sites, they came together with some additional sites as well. So we would explore all of the options.
I did ask that this item be put on the agenda today for discussion purposes and maybe some further direction. When this item was brought up as something that could be implemented fairly readily, at least on a simple basis at one site, and maybe then expanded at other sites, and we did identify other sites. But the primary site was the Ed C. Little facility, where there's already facilities that can be, or pipelines, I should say, that carry recycled water. It can be easily modified and tapped to put in a standpipe and a hose, so the public could come and avail themselves of that. And so my anticipation was that this would be done relatively quickly and within a couple of months, and this would have gone back to September. But so that before the end of the year, we have at least one filling station available, and then be working on adding additional filling stations. And we now have a process in place, which kind of seems fairly involved and maybe takes quite a bit of time, but might be short-circuited if we can just focus on getting something in place and then continue to work on the partnership agreements and expanding it, et cetera. Obviously, the more facilities that are available, the easier it is for the public to make themselves available of the use of the recycled water. But it'd be nice to have one to start with and then continue that expansion. So with respect to the permitting, my understanding is pretty straightforward for this. So have we started do we have somebody doing the report that needs to be submitted to DDW?
We are in the process right now of issuing a task order to our on-call consultants who would assist us. It's very important to note, and let me point out that I know our general manager, myself, and our staff have heard the comments from the committee and the full board, and we understand that this is a high priority item, that we understand the importance of this item, and we really recognize the community value of it. But this is not a budget or a planned program or project. We are pulling our staff together, and again, while it sounds quite easy, it's amazing to see how many different departments this involves as far as how we're going to roll it out. So I'm very pleased with the progress that's being made, but we really need an on-call consultant to assist us. And with that, we have begun the process of reviewing our current Title 22 permit, but we do recognize that we would need to focus in on that site-specific permit, and hopefully we could move forward on that. And that would allow us to move forward in a quicker manner than you see here on the page. But we do have our engineer Manager of Operations, Uzi Daniel here. She could provide more of the specifics. But again, I think this is a process of focusing in on that site-specific Edward C. Little facility, as you just said, and hopefully we move through the process quicker than we're anticipating.
So I don't know, Director Williams, if you have any comments on this, or how about the other board members? I think as you said, and I think as I earlier said, when we brought this up, we thought that this would be something that could be implemented fairly quickly, at least for starters, and then over time it would be expanded. So if we do that, and I'm glad to hear that you've got the on-call consultant basically negotiating a contract to get going on that report so that we can get the permit amendment in place. That should take a couple of months. And then the modifications required over at NC Little to tap into an existing line out in the parking area so that the public has access to it should not be something that's all that expensive to do. It's pretty straightforward. I'm not saying it's free, but it should be straightforward enough. So I appreciate the fact that this was not something that's in the budget, and probably more than anybody else on this board, I'm the one that talks about budget. So I will be the first one to say that there are times when we need to do some things, but this is not an expensive endeavor, if I can say that. It should be relatively cheap, all things considered, compared to some of the other monies that we do spend. And I think that we should be able to find money in the budget to do that. So on the planning side and permitting side, I think what you just said, we can move a little bit faster, maybe have that all in place before the end of the year. If we can get that report done, get it over to DDW, it shouldn't be that hard for them to bless it and send it over to the regional board.
Well, I want to make it very clear that we're going to have to go through that process as far as issuing the task order and getting that on-call consultant. We are very hopeful that the permitting agencies will see this as something that's needed, especially as we get further and further in the drought and we anticipate a drier, rainy season. Hopefully we'll have this sooner than later so that as Metropolitan Water District contemplates allocations in the spring or possibly early summer, maybe we have something up there, but I'd rather not overpromise in this case. There's a lot of different agencies that we need to work with and we'll be reliant on as far as moving things as fast as possible. But I can assure you that our staff is dedicated to this. We understand the urgency and there won't be any undue delays.
And if I could step in and also affirm the same that myself working with Barkev, we're going to fast track every step of this process. And so to the extent practical that we can implement a quick change at Etsy Little by the end of the year, we will absolutely do that.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. In the summary report, it does talk about quite a few steps that need to be taken. So I just want some clarification. On the CEQA, I'm not quite sure that this requires a lot of CEQA, if any, because it should be just categorically exempt, especially at the NC Little facility. So we're not contemplating a mitigated negative deck or anything like that.
I don't believe so, no.
So that would be something that's pretty straightforward. And then the design should be, again, one of these things, at least we're tapping the line over at NC Little. Not all that sophisticated, and construction should be nominal cost. So to the extent that there is a sense of urgency behind it and we can get this done before the end of the year, would be great. I do think that as a board, we've committed to really increase the amount of water conservation within our service area. And one way to do that is to reduce outdoor water usage, but in some cases, it's nice to provide alternatives to some of our customers, and not every customer that uses a good amount of outdoor water it has access to recycled water. So this would really avail that opportunity to the public. I think it merits moving forward quicker rather than later. And then we can expand it and partner with other agencies, et cetera. But let's get our portion in service right away and continue to work and provide additional facilities over time.
We agree with that.
Okay. All right, well, that was primarily the purpose of putting that on here, just to provide that additional direction and get this thing moving sooner rather than later.
No, and thank you for that. And I will point this out, I'm sure most of you already noticed this, but that those initial slides that begin on page 59 and 60, those were actually pulled from our very capable staff and the monthly engineering update. And so Camille Castillo will be prepared to talk a little bit about it. We can move through it a little bit quicker when we get to that, but we'll maintain that as part of our engineering update for future meetings. So you'll constantly be updated as far as the progress on that.
Okay. All right, thank you. Okay. All right, then moving forward, we're done with the action calendar and we've got the information calendar coming up. First item to tee up is the EDC Little Solids Handling Improvement Project update and proposed next step. So we have an update on that?
We do, and that item is 6A, does begin on packet page 64. And for this presentation, we do have John Benner, our engineer one.
Okay, and I'd like to take a moment, if I may, just to highlight this particular project as one that was in my first general manager review meeting, which an invitation was extended to the board to sit in on and ask questions to learn more. But the intention is to further vet the projects that have been included in the CIP budget. Beyond the PV lateral project, that was pretty much kind of green lighted to go full steam ahead. And so with that, I just want to highlight that the business case here seems to be a sound business case. And so I've asked staff to bring forward this presentation for the committee consideration so that I could get some additional feedback as I consider next steps on this very project. And so with that, I'll hand it off back to EJ and to John to walk through the analysis here.
Take it away, John.
Thank you, Joe. Thanks, Greg. Good afternoon, Chairman Alvarez and members of the board. Today I'll be presenting an information item for the Solids Handling Improvement Project, which is CIP number 10059. This project has consistently been ranked in the top 3 most important projects to district operations by both our in-house operations team and our contract operators. So I'm very pleased to be able to bring it through today. The information item begins on page 64 of the board packet, but we'll be beginning today with attachment A, the presentation, which begins on page 69. So from there, if you turn to page 17, we'll begin today with some background on the project. The solids handling system at the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility is a vital component to the district's recycled water production. This system takes the solid sludge that is a natural byproduct of the district's water treatment. It filters, conditions, clarifies, and eventually presses it into cakes of solid waste that are then hauled away on trucks for reuse. Our compliance and ops team do excellent work to ensure that the solids waste hauled away meets the EPA's Class A biosolids rule, and so it can be utilised for reuse. The solids handling system as a whole is critical to West Basin's recycled water production. If we are not able to filter and dispose of the solids byproduct, our treatment trains will grind to a halt and we will be unable to operate. Therefore, it is no exaggeration to say that if the solids handling system fails, West Basin cannot produce recycled water. The most significant stage of this system comes right at the end. West Basin operates 2 plate and frame filter presses, also known as PFFPs, that press the treated sludge into the aforementioned cake and deposit them into the waiting trucks for haulage. Both of these were installed in 1995, and recent condition assessments have shown that many of the major components of these presses are in a poor condition and far beyond their useful life, with most of these components reaching the end of their anticipated useful life in 2010. This poor condition has had several major impacts on our day-to-day operations at ECL. Most notably, the poor condition of the presses has escalated the impact of already increasing haulage and chemical treatment costs and resulted in increased maintenance. Since 2016, West Basin staff have commissioned 3 studies, completed in 2018, 2021, and this year in 2022. These studies and their results will be explained in a later slide. After carefully reviewing these studies and the cost of simply maintaining these PFFPs, it is the recommendation of staff to proceed with the most economically viable option to refurbish the plate and frame filter presses to a like-new condition. Next slide, please. Before we evaluate the options available to West Basin, it's important to assess the need for such a project. We touch on some of the key points of this work, going into a little more detail on them. The most significant point of this is the increased risk of a recycled water shutdown. As previously mentioned, these PFFPs are a critical component of a critical system. If the PFFPs fail, we will be unable to produce recycled water. A shutdown of this size has been estimated to cost the district at least $923,000 per month in lost sales and increased purchase of potable water. As many of the PFFP components are specialist items, some of them coming from Europe, a potential shutdown could last longer than 1 month. Even if the PFFPs don't completely fail and cause a recycled water shutdown, their poor condition is currently causing increased costs each month. Put this into numbers, we have to remove approximately 8,000 tons of solids from the treatment trains each year. If the presses are in good condition, they can create cakes of approximately 50% density, so that's 50% solids to 50% mixture of water and chemicals, meaning we would need to haul away approximately 16,000 tons of cake solids. In their current state, the presses are producing cakes of 30% density, meaning that we need to haul away approximately 27,000 tons in order to remove the same 8,000 tons of solids from the system. That equates to approximately 70% more tonnage to be hauled. As you can imagine, this has a huge effect on both our haulage and chemical treatment costs. In addition, we are also seeing increased maintenance costs due to the aged components and a need for increased operator presence during standard operation due to failed control systems. The pictures on the right of the slide here illustrate some component failures that have occurred in recent years, where plates have been misaligned, pump seals have failed, allowing sludge into hydraulic reservoirs, and line buildup has damaged both pipes and plates. All of these issues were resolved quickly by our operations teams and contract operators, but they represent the types of failures indicative of equipment beyond its useful life. In total, the estimated impact of this poor condition, so that's additional operational labour, maintenance, haulage, and chemical treatment costs, is an additional $1.7 million per year in O&M costs. In addition to these purely monetary impacts, the poor performance of the presses, and therefore the solids handling system as a whole, has contributed to an increased strain on the whole recycled water production system, particularly in the years since the Hyperion onset. It has contributed to worse recycled water quality, which has meant that the district's water has had to be supplemented with more potable water to meet requirements, and has contributed to reports of odour issues from the ECL plant by the neighbours. All of these concerns have had a detrimental impact on West Basin's reputation, an impact that is difficult to quantify. Next slide, please. This slide shows a summary of our recent studies and which options they evaluated and recommended. As you can see here, the 2018 feasibility study evaluated a number of alternatives. The first of these was to refurbish current presses, while 4 further options looked into replacing or augmenting presses with new types of dewatering technologies. The most promising of these, alternative 4B here in bold, is a centrifuge-based design. This was taken forward into a pilot study for ECL at the time and was eventually recommended in that 2018 report as a preferred option. In 2021, West Basin staff commissioned a study to evaluate the potential to discharge into either the Los Angeles County Sanitation District sewer main, LACSD, or the City of Los Angeles Sanitation and Environment sewer main, LASAM, eliminating the need for a solids handling system altogether. However, due to the composition and quantity of West Basin solids discharge, the annual surcharge fees, which are based off of those agency ordinances, were substantial. In addition, both agencies expressed significant concerns about whether such a connection would even be viable, considering the age and capacity of their current sewage treatment systems and their sewer mains. However, if the sewer discharge option were to become viable in the future, the LACSD connections would be the most economically prudent of the 2 alternatives. Over the last year, West Basin staff have commissioned a new study, one that takes these major alternatives evaluated in the previous studies and applies current costs to them. The main drivers behind this new study were the rapidly escalating haulage and chemical costs across the industry. As an example, haulage costs have risen from $37 per tonne to $78 per tonne in the last 5 years. This is approximately an annual increase of 16%, and are likely to continue rising. This development casts the previous alternatives in a different light, with annual O&M costs becoming much more important than capital construction costs. This new study took the major alternatives, applied current costs to them, and then projected these costs out for 15 years. The results of this study clearly show that alternative one, the refurbishment of the current system, is the most economically viable alternative over this time frame. This is mostly due to the far higher efficiencies that a press-based system can produce, leading to lower haulage and chemical costs, negating those industry price increases. West Basin staff took this recommendation and the cost analyses from this final study, and then conducted their own assessment of a do-nothing alternative, i.e. simply continuing the current maintenance schedule and replacing components as and when they fail. Staff utilised the same methods of cost estimation as the 2022 study to project these annual O&M costs across the next 15 years, providing a point of comparison against the studied alternatives. In this presentation and the information item before the board today, we will refer to 4 options. Option A is the do-nothing alternative, internally evaluated using current and projected O&M costs. Option B is the refurbishment of the plate and frame filter presses. This is both staff's preferred course of action and the recommendation of the 2022 solids disposal study. Option C is the most viable of the new technology alternatives. And option D comprises discharging ECL solid waste directly to the local Los Angeles County Sanitation District facility. Next slide. So we'll look at each of these 4 options in turn, beginning with option A. This is maintaining the plate and frame filter presses. This is effectively the do-nothing option, whereby West Basin would continue to maintain the current presses, only replacing equipment as and when it fails, and only when necessary to keep the presses functioning. As you would imagine, this option has no capital outlay. However, it does have a significant annual O&M expenditure due to the increased haulage costs, chemical line costs, and operator labour costs. In addition, this option would contain significant risks due to the poor condition of components and the potential for downtime of the system. According to the 2018 condition assessment, approximately $3.1 million worth of equipment is in a poor or very poor condition and will be likely to fail at some point over the next 15 years. In addition, a recent condition assessment targeted at the expensive plates that make up the plate and frame filter presses estimated that an average of 10 plates per year would require replacing. Those are $10,000 each, were we to continue current operation of the presses. And finally, both the internal operations team and our contract operators predict an average of 1 monthly shutdown per year over the 15-year period due to component failure. These additional risks total approximately $1.2 million per year across the 15-year timeframe, which means that the total annual O&M costs for this option total $5.8 million per year. When forecast across the 15-year period using a net present value forecast, i.e. the cost in today's dollars of future expenditure, we reach a total 15-year NPV of $109.9 million. Next slide, please. Option B is the recommended option of both West Basin staff and the 2022 solids disposal study. It entails the refurbishment of our current presses and associated components. This refurbishment would comprise the replacement of many components that are beyond repair and the refurbishment of several components that can be salvaged. Such a refurbishment would restore the FFPs to a like-new condition and extend the system's useful life by approximately 10 to 15 years. This option does contain a significant capital expenditure of $15.3 million, which is the amount specified as the project total in the information item for you today. As you can see from this pie chart on the top right, the vast majority of this expenditure is in construction costs, which includes procurement and installation of the new equipment, as well as refurbishment of the remaining components. However, this option would result in a significant reduction in annual O&M costs. The 2 main drivers behind this are efficiency and reliability. A refurbishment of the presses would increase their efficiency back to the level able to produce cakes at 50% density, massively reducing both the annual haulage and chemical costs. In addition, a more reliable system requires less maintenance, less operator presence, fewer costly urgent component replacements, and most importantly, a near zero risk of downtime. All of the risks associated with the previous option, the maintenance, are mitigated by this refurbishment. And in addition, all of the Unquantifiable costs such as reliance on supplementary potable water, odor issues, and solids circulating in the system would also be significantly reduced under this option. This approach to the project over the next two approaches also contains other ancillary benefits. The first of these is that by simply refurbishing the presses, West Basin can keep at least one press running throughout the project, significantly minimizing operational impacts. In addition, and perhaps more importantly, this approach allows West Basin to implement the most impactful cost-saving measures, such as filter cloth replacement, as soon as possible. The result of this is that we should see immediate reductions in O&M costs from the outset of this project. In pure financial terms, the reduced annual O&M cost of this option lead to a far lower 15-year NPV cost of $69 million, despite a significant capital investment at the project outset. This is roughly a 33% decrease on the do-nothing option A. Next slide, please. Option C comprises the most promising of the new technology alternatives evaluated in both the 2018 and 2022 studies. This alternative, referred to as a centrifuge with post-line process, was taken forward into a pilot study in 2018 and proved to be the optimal new technology system in that 2018 study. As it's a new system, it would necessitate the complete removal of the current PFFPs, and it would also require far more design than simply refurbishment. These two aspects are the main reasons why the capital costs are so significantly higher than refurbishment. In addition, the annual O&M costs are slightly higher as well. This is due to the centrifuge-based design naturally resulting in lower cake densities than a refurbished PFFP. In 2018, this was lower, hence the 2018 recommendation to replace PFFPs with this design. However, the escalating haulage and chemical costs in recent years caused this option's annual O&M costs to rise far faster than the refurbishment, leading to it no longer being the most economically viable option, with an annualized 15-year NPV of $77.3 million. Next slide, please. The final option we'll look at today is the most viable of the two sewer discharge options. In 2021, West Basin staff commissioned a study into the potential of discharging solid sludge directly to local sewer mains, thus bypassing the need for a solids handling system. The study looked at two options: discharging to the LACSD sewer main, located just outside ECL, or discharging to the LA SAN sewer main at one of the two potential locations further north in El Segundo. Both of these options fall under agency ordinances for discharge. These ordinances dictate both a fixed one-time connection fee of approximately $13 million and an annual surcharge fee based on quantity and composition of the discharge. All of these fees are prescribed by agency ordinances and cannot be reduced. West Basin staff have had several meetings with both agencies and discussed the fees themselves as well as potential payment plans or trial periods available. However, none of these would benefit West Basin nor reduce the overall costs. In addition, it should be noted that both of the two agencies and the City of El Segundo expressed concern about this discharge plan due to the current condition and capacity of their systems. The costs shown here are for the LACSD option, which was far cheaper than the LA SAN option in both capital investment and annual costs. As you can see from these pie charts, the vast bulk of this option's cost is comprised of agency fees, with the construction and maintenance of the necessary pump stations and pipelines minimal in comparison. However, these significant costs result in an annualized 15-year NPV of $105.4 million, far higher than both options B and C, the refurbishment and the new technology, and approximately equal to the do-nothing option A. Next slide, please. This slide gives a summary of the four options. As you can see here, of the four options, option B, a refurbishment of the current PFFPs, is the most economically optimal option over the 15-year time period, with estimated savings of approximately $40 million over simply maintaining the current system. As the table on the right here shows, this is due to the significantly lower annual O&M costs associated with a refurbished system. Due to these reduced annual O&M costs, the refurbishment option is actually forecast to break even with the do-nothing option, that's the only maintaining option, in around 4.7 years. This means that a refurbished system would begin saving the district money each year from this point onwards. In addition, approximately $2.6 million of refinery funding has already been agreed, which would reduce West Basin's capital expenditure and further reduce the break-even point to approximately 4.2 years. This chart also depicts the potential timeframes on the ongoing discussions with the Metropolitan Water District, where preliminary discussions indicate a move towards advanced treated water within 5 to 10 years. If the entirety of West Basin's network was connected or converted to advanced treated water, there may no longer be a requirement for a solids handling system. However, it should be noted that the solids handling system will still be required if any secondary effluent is still being treated at ECM. But due to the potential for switching to advanced treated water, it is important that any decision made now has this prospect in mind. The refurbishment of the presses is forecast to pay for itself before the earliest date the switch could occur. Therefore, even if the switch to MWD water occurs in exactly 5 years, West Basin would save close to $1 million by refurbishing the presses now. And more importantly, if this switch were to be delayed, West Basin would be realizing savings of approximately $3 million for every year of delay. For example, if the switch to advanced treated water, the switch for our whole system to advanced treated water doesn't occur until 2032, 10 years from now, West Basin would have saved approximately $19 million by deciding to refurbish the presses now. Next slide, please. So what's the fiscal impact of the proposed refurbishment? In the 2022-2023 approved budget, the solids handling project sought $1,519,543 in funding for this financial year. The total project estimated cost at the time is $9,150,000. This total project estimate has since been revised to $15,300,000 to match the cost estimate given in the 2022 solids disposal study. However, the 2022-23 fiscal year budget will likely remain the same. This is mostly due to the fact that this financial year will be spent undertaking limited design and installation of some minor components. While the current schedule dictates pre-procurement of major components beginning towards the end of this financial year, most of the payments for these components will be made once the items are delivered in the following financial year, so 23-24. Therefore, the bulk of the project budget is expected to be spent in the financial years 23-24 and 24-25, when major components are delivered and require installation. The current refinery agreements have approximately $2.6 million in confirmed refinery funding for this project, reducing West Basin's anticipated capital expenditure to approximately $12.7 million. As previously noted, this reduction in anticipated capital expenditure further reduces the break-even point with the do-nothing option to 4.2 years. Next slide, please. This final slide shows the anticipated project schedule. The diamonds here represent project approval, represent board approvals. The rectangular boxes represent actions taken by external consultants or contractors, and the half rectangular boxes represent actions taken by West Basin staff. The first diamond here in the top left, the project review, is this information item that we're bringing before you today. After today, the next task undertaken by staff will be the filter cloth specification and the limited design request for proposals. These are internal tasks, and the project will be brought back to the board before any funds are awarded. The project schedule has been split into 4 steps or stages. Stage 1, in light blue, comprises the procurement and installation of 280 filter cloths. These cloths are an integral part of the filter presses, with the solid cakes being formed by squeezing that filtrate through these filter cloths. Replacing these cloths would temporarily boost the efficiency of the presses, potentially saving up to $60,000 per month in haulage costs. While only a temporary boost due to the underlying state of the filter presses, replacing these cloths early on in the project can significantly reduce O&M costs in the first year. For this stage, we aim to bring an award for purchase of the filter cloths to the board later this month, with an award for installing the cloths in the December board meeting. The cloths have a lead time of around 13 weeks, and so it's important to procure them as quickly as possible to realise the efficiency benefit. Both of these awards are estimated to be around $75,000 each. Step 2, in green, will be to procure a design consultant. The main tasks for this design consultant will be threefold. The first task will be to develop a pre-procurement list for West Basin to enact. By pre-procuring the bulk of the equipment ourselves early on in the project, we can shorten the total project length, reduce the amount of time contractors are waiting for parts to be delivered, and eliminate contractor markup and procure components. The second task will be a limited design phase with full design of only a few key components such as the fill pumps, conditioning tanks, and instrumentation and control system, with other major components only requiring in-kind design. The third and final design task will be to develop phasing of the refurbishment with a particular focus on both limiting operational impact and implementing O&M cost reducing processes as soon as possible. We expect to bring the award of this design contract before the board in December this year, with an estimated award cost of $1.3 million. Step 3, here in brown, is the pre-procurement itself. As mentioned, it's a vital part of this project as it should reduce both the overall project cost and length. We intend to bring the pre-procurement awards before the board in April of next year for an estimated amount of $5 million. However, the bulk of the cost will likely be expended in the following financial year, 23-24, when the components begin to arrive. The final stage of the project here in dark blue is the installation and refurbishment itself. This is the bulk of the project and will entail procuring both construction and construction management consultants to both install and deliver components and manage refurbishments. West Basin staff expect to bring the award for these contracts before the board in December 2023 with an anticipated amount of $8.8 million. While this is only an information item before you today, as you can see, the board will have multiple opportunities to approve each and every stage of the project as we progress and can halt or reorient the project at any of those stages. Between now and the next board approval, the only expenditure will be West Basin labour costs on producing a filter cloth specification document and conducting a limited design RFP. Next slide, please. That concludes both the presentation and the information item. As mentioned, we'll next be bringing this project before the board in the regular board meeting later this month, seeking award of procurement contract for the filter cloths. Are there any questions?
And let me kind of clarify that we would be bringing any future action to the committee first before we bring it to the full board. We would not go straight to the board with those particular procurement items that John mentioned. I think that perhaps, we were planning to present this in September, but I have provided supplemental information to the committee here, binders of the analysis. And so rather than bring this to the September meeting, we brought it here today to give the committee time to look at those binders, which were inclusive of these presentations that were intended to give back in September. And so thank you, John, for that presentation. And sorry to interrupt, Chair Alvarez.
Director Williams, do you have any questions, comments?
I'm just happy you're not asking us to spend any money today.
But that's coming up.
But
We're just being set up for spending
great
money.
presentation. I mean, this is some heavy duty stuff and excellent presenter. I must tell you, great job. But since it's informational only, I will take in this information and I'll check with you later. Thank you.
Any other board members have any questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Would like a little bit of additional background maybe on option A. If you could expand for me those costs and really the breakdown of kind of where they come from.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know if you can do that on today. Maybe this is something for a follow-up before we move to some of the other reports that you want to bring back to the committee, that we really look at the cost of the maintenance of this of these membranes, or I'm sorry, of the plates and the presses. Just looking at your summary of options, the least expensive one on the short term, and effectively in 4 years we will be shutting that plant down. So under 4 years, option one looks like your best approach. You're recommending option B, which is significantly more expensive. So I'd like to know a little bit more about the detail cost and really why the operator labor costs seem to be as high as they are and how that's achieved. Need a better understanding of how we actually pay our contracts. I thought we had an operator contract that was a fixed amount for the year, and yet I see things all the time that says, well, here's the operator cost, here's the operator cost. So if it's not a fixed amount, then I'd like to know more about that. But my understanding is that we have a contract, it's a fixed amount. We're supposed to maintain all of the facilities for that amount, regardless of the level of effort that it may take. It's going to take, obviously, in some cases, more on one item this year than next year. There's always that trade-off that occurs, but that's part of entering into a maintenance contract. So I'd like to have that information so that I better understand really the costs that are driving option A. And if maybe we have some more control of those costs. So as a follow-up, maybe that we start out with a more detailed presentation on what effectively really truly costs to maintain that. And if we had to maybe pre-buy some of the plates and so on because of the items you kind of mentioned about the fact that they're imported from Europe, et cetera, and just have them stand by. You mentioned that you can always operate this with one press down and the other press working, and I think we operate that way now. There is significant maintenance required. At least I've seen that one of the presses was down. So I would like to see a much more detailed evaluation with a real presentation or discussion, not presentation per se. I'd like to understand really how our maintenance contracts do work. And I think your summary of options graph is very revealing. And thank you for that. That's a very effective way of presenting that data. But, it's flat for a year and then it kind of rises at a pretty steep rate on the current operation and maintenance. So why that rapid rise? Again, back to just the question, when you bring that back, what it really takes to keep this thing running the way it is.
I can answer some of those questions now if you like.
No, because I'd like to see it in a more comprehensive format, and it really wouldn't be fair. So we'd like to see that brought back. That's okay with you, Director?
Fine.
Okay. All right, so then moving on, the next item up is the monthly operations update.
Yes, Chairman Alvarez, before I move to that item, I would like to echo Director Williams's comments. John, that was an excellent presentation, but I also want to note that I know that this has been a collective team effort on behalf of our engineers and our operators, led by Barka Masurlian, as well as Wendell Johnson, and then of course our general manager, Greg Reed, through the general manager's review. This has been a long time coming, and I think that presentation was well worth the wait. I think you did a great job.
Thank you, everyone, and I'm gonna sign off myself. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye now.
The next item that we have for you is item 6B. It's our monthly operations update. Begins on packet page 81. And for this presentation, we have a team of our West Basin staff. We have Susanna Lee, our senior operations engineer, Jamie Malpede, our water quality and environmental compliance supervisor, and Frank Fuchs, our operations supervisor as well.
Thank you, EJ.
Susanna, if I could interrupt you right at the beginning, you always do a very good job of presenting this material. But just in the interest of time, maybe there are some things that are kind of pretty standard every month. So you might want to skip over some of these things and just move to the more critical points that you just want to highlight. But because you do an excellent job, and I think you can just focus on kind of the key points and keep us on track so that we're out of here shortly and home for dinner.
Really short. All right, we can move to page 89. We'll begin with the water quality I will be short. As you can see, the graph focus on to the right. The water quality has been improving, and we are averaging down to around 9.2 this past month. So that's excellent. Moving on to next page. Our suspended solids, our solid floating into the plant now is averaging right before the hyperion upset. So it was averaging around 17 parts per million. So that is good. With that, we can move to page 91. For all these photos, these are all like the routine maintenance work, but I do want to highlight the third photo or the second photo from the right. That was relocation of a temporary sodium hypochlorite tank that was to replace, well, a temporary solution for a leaky bulk tank that happened at JMM. So that original bulk tank has already been decommissioned and it needs to be replaced. Right now, we do have a temporary tank in place of the original tank. Right, that is not being properly designed. So engineering will be bringing this item to the board's attention for the design and replacement of this tank in the coming months. So I just want to highlight that particular effort. With that, and I'll pass it on to the next. Jamie.
Next slide, please.
Next slide.
Same comments.
I only got a couple slides. This is an outline of the environmental compliance activities for September. A lot of things happened in the past month. We issued an enforcement action response for dissolved sulfide exudants for LA County Sanitation District permit for ECL or CIP waste. We had a stormwater inspection for both our industrial and construction permits. We also had an inspection from Coupa that's done by the El Segundo Fire Department. We submitted our evaluation report for level 1 ERA evaluation that's an exceedance for total suspended solids in our stormwater. And we paid our industrial wastewater surcharges, which are based on an estimate of the annual report. Next slide, please. We got a nice little recognition from LA County Sanitation District saying that we were in compliance for the year 2021 for 3 of our facilities, all 3 of our facilities that have permits with that. Next slide, please. This is just a preview. A well sampling RFP is coming. We're currently soliciting proposals, which will end October 14th. We will make a recommendation to the board November 9th. And that's all I have. Move fast.
Good afternoon, directors. Try to make this quick as well. This is the monthly potable water customer service update. I just wanted to highlight for WB23A, this is a new service design that's being implemented by Metropolitan Water District for Golden State Water Company. They're requesting some additional funding. Metropolitan is to complete the design, and so we anticipate bringing this to the board next month for consideration. Next slide.
On that one, when that comes back to the board for board consideration, the funding is something that should be paid for by Golden State?
Yes. This is our monthly distribution update. This is the work that's implemented by our distribution operator, Infomark. Just wanted to highlight that we had one airbag leak from the service line. Last month, it was a minor leak. It was repaired immediately. It's located in Carson on Wilmington Avenue, just north of Carson Street. And Infomark exercised 13 valves, and they also completed 535 dig alerts. If that number is incorrect, so that will be revised. Next slide. So we're currently working with 21. There's currently 21 recycled water sites under development for our in the construction phase. I want to highlight the Torrance Technology Center, Phase 2. These are 4 new buildings that are being constructed. One of the buildings was recently completed, so we anticipate connecting the irrigation system for that site later this month. For the Inglewood Basketball and Entertainment Center, this is the Clipper Stadium. The developers preparing to construct the recycled water piping to the bathrooms and the cooling towers. We've met several times with the Department of Public Health just to ensure that they understand the requirements for the construction and inspection work for that. We anticipate they'll be starting that work in the next couple of months. Moving on to the next slide. And these are this is the table of the existing recycled water sites that are undergoing modifications. And I just wanted to highlight Northrop Grumman site that currently uses recycled water for their cooling towers, and they're currently they've already started the construction to expand the recycled water use for their irrigation and 1 additional cooling tower. Next slide. And this is just to highlight some of the inspection work that we've been implementing with the Department of Public Health. This is within the SoFi Stadium development. This is the Hollywood Park residential. They will utilize recycled water for irrigation. And so these are just some photographs from the recent inspections implemented with the Department of Public Health. Next slide. Similarly, we've been continuing to work with Lusinger High School in Lawndale. They're modifying their existing recycled water irrigation system, as well as replacing their athletic fields with artificial turf. So again, we've been working with the contractor and the Department of Public Health to conduct these site inspections. We anticipate they'll complete this work and connect in November. And then moving on to the next slide. This is work that the Manhattan Village Shopping Center has been undergoing. They are a site that's already using recycled water, but they're currently expanding their recycled water use to a parking lot on the north side of that property. So we anticipate that they'll complete that in December of this year. And so these are some photographs with a recent staff in the Department of Public Health. That completes our presentation. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any question, Director Williams?
No, thank you.
Any question from the board members? All right, no other questions. Thank you very much. That was very succinct. We appreciate that. So the next item up and our final item is the monthly engineering update.
That is correct. And for this presentation, which begins on packet page 103, we again have a team of our West Basin staff. We have Wendell Johnson, our manager of engineering, Camille Castillo, engineer 1, Veronica Govea, engineering supervisor, and Kevin Cullen, our engineer 2.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. We're here this afternoon to give you a quick update on our CIP status. If you could turn to your page 106 in your packet. We presented this slide for the first time, I think about 2 months ago. We never had a chance to really explain it. This slide lists all the active projects that are in the CIP. In addition, we added that green column, which tells you what the budget is for this fiscal year. And it also shows you what is spent for this fiscal year. In addition to that, all labor is captured here through, in this particular case, if you look at the bottom of the slide, it's through 8/31, 2022. Okay, so we're able to both show projects costs to that date, as well as the labor costs involved in that. I have 2 new projects, and I brought Veronica along with me to explain her project, as well as Camille. And we'll be on page 110 in the packet. This refers to before what Susanna Lee talked about, the leaking sodium hypochlorite thing. And Veronica will provide you with a little bit of an update on that. You can turn to page 110 in your packet.
Yes, thank you, Wendell. And this particular project is basically a component of a much greater project that we had in mind as part of our upcoming budgeting planning. But essentially in August of 2022, the operators noticed that there was a leak at the bottom of the tank that you can see on your right-hand corner on the top. And at the bottom, you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but essentially that's the leak right there. So our operators were very, very quick at putting a stop on it and called company to clean up, and basically were able to bring a supplemental tank in the meantime while we get another tank in place. So the original tank, it's about 23 years old. It's from 1999, and essentially is the bleach tank, in other words. And currently, this tank actually supports the nitrified system as well as the boiler feed. The tank that is temporarily being used is a little bit smaller. It's 6,900 gallons tanks, and our next steps to get this project going will be basically to get a small scope of work for one of our on-call services to address all the anchoring that needs to be included as part of the seismic retrofitting that needs to be done on the new tank, and basically start the procurement process for that tank. Again, we're decoupling this project from the overall picture of the big program that we had, as this particular tank requires more immediate attention to be replaced. So you can follow me to the next page on page 111. This is like basically just like some kind of like a schedule that we anticipate for this particular project, which includes, the planning that we're currently doing to get this project scope of work to on-call services, to have our award next month. And the project itself, it's pretty small in size, so we should be able to get our construction advertising in January 2023. And because of the holidays, it might be a little bit difficult to get that out in mid-December. So construction award expected for March 2023, and a construction notice to proceed on April 2023. So as part of the other components that we're going to be looking at is like to minimize the time impact on the waiting for the fabrication of this tank. On the design component, we're going to be looking at how long will the tank be taking on being fabricated. So if it makes more sense for the district to purchase the tank to minimize the time that we have this tank at the site and get the procurement first, we'll start moving towards that direction. Otherwise, it might be the contractor who basically gets the tank, pending on the time. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay.
I have a simple question for you. So the tank we're replacing is a 10,000 gallon tank. The tank you install on a temporary basis is 7,000 gallons. So can you get by with a 7,000 gallon tank?
I think it's a balancing act. Susanna, maybe you can add a little bit more into that.
Yeah, operators just have to balance, like watch the level a lot more closely because we have to juggle between the operation usage and then delivery. And we cannot order too soon as well because there's a minimum amount that the chemical vendors would deliver to the site. So it is a operational constraint at this point to make sure that we have adequate chemicals, and then as well as like order ahead that we have enough storage as well. So
is the storage in this tank something that's tracked?
yeah, we because it's a temporary rental tank, it didn't come with a automatic or
No, previously on the 10,000 gallon tank, is that something that was tracked?
yes.
So could we see that data?
You mean like
Like a year's worth of data on the fluctuating levels in the tank?
Sure, we can request it.
Okay. That would be it.
For how long?
For a year.
And this afternoon, I also have Camille with us, and she will be providing you an update on the fill station program. Go ahead, Camille.
you, Wendell. Good evening, members of the committee. So as EJ mentioned, he kind of went into depth on this. So I will cover the details of how we want to break this into two phases and the feasibility analysis that we plan to partake in. And so as part of phase one, we want to look at the connection sites. So we will onboard a consultant who will basically analyze the potential sites within ECL that we could utilize. And as part of that analysis, the connection points as well. So we can tap into existing irrigation lines, and currently there are about 1 inch to 2 inch lines that are located throughout the facility. And then we can also potentially tap into the existing main line that's located along Hughes, and that's about 8 inches. And we would also ask the consultant to consider the traffic circulation and potential impacts that the traffic might occur utilizing the existing visitor center parking lot. And so depending on the hours that customers are able to go, it might have some traffic impacts. And then we would also consider the operation maintenance, and that mostly considers the staffing that would be needed if it becomes a permanent fill station. And because LADWP shared a lot of materials with us, we want to consider the customer training and the resources that will be needed in order to implement this project. And after the consultant's able to prepare this feasibility analysis, they will obviously go into the design and construction. And separately, we would have onboard another consultant to help with the permitting. In that case, they will prepare the site-specific supplemental engineering reports. And in case the Title 22 engineering report needs to be completed, they will also help complete that as well. And so then they would be onboarded so that they can assist with the notice of intent in case we needed to update the Title 22 permits, and also any other permits that will be needed in order to construct the fill station. And phase two is after we are able to get phase one implemented, and that will be considering another location for a remote fill station located within our customer service. And the same procedures will also be needed, feasibility analysis, as well as permitting and design construction. So if you follow me along to the next page, 113, you'll just see that these are pictures taken from a preliminary walk around to the ECL Visitor Center parking lot to see where we could potentially connect. And also the image on the far right just shows a potential connection if we wanted to have a service lateral to the existing main line in the street. And as EG mentioned, this is just the schedule, and the main driver of the schedule is obviously the permitting, which could be expedited depending on whether we get a coordination with the regulatory agencies to get that permit quickly. But overall, our goal is to move as quickly as possible along with every department in this staff. So that is my update for fill station.
Okay, well, you heard our previous discussion on this, so hopefully that line can shrink quite a bit.
We'll do our best.
I think you can do better.
I also have Kevin Holland, engineer, to give us an update on JM and Carson. I also want to point out that if you want more information on the PLA, that this information is also provided on slide 119 as to what target areas the project labor agreement actually addresses. So without any further ado, Kevin?
Thank you, Wendell. As mentioned, I'll be providing an update on our phase two expansion project. Next slide, please. Just kind of an overview of where we're at in the construction phase. In terms of schedule, the contract is 660 days to date. About 460 days have elapsed. That's about 70% of the schedule. We are experiencing some delays related to procurement. Those are showing about a 60-day impact currently, so we're trying to work through those and mitigate them as best possible. In terms of cost, the construction contract has a base value of about $21 million. To date, the contractor has earned about $10.2 million. That's 48% of their contract value. And in terms of RFIs, there's been a total of 185 on the project. With the construction management team and the engineer on board, we processed 176. Just giving the contractor the information they need to do to complete the job. And then in terms of submittals, 265 and 255 have been processed. Next slide, please. Here's some photos showing some of the highlighted construction items in the past month. On the left-hand side, you'll see the installation of our new carbon dioxide storage tank. That was back on September 19th. And then on the right-hand side, September 16th, we placed our new FRP storage tanks in the new chemical storage area. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, we installed new access ramps or access stairs for the chemical storage area. And then on the right-hand side, you can see we started the demolition of our masonry wall. That's in the northeast corner of the plant, and that's where our new potable water connection will penetrate the perimeter wall. Next slide, please. On the left-hand side, you can see on site a lot of piping is starting to be installed, especially above grade, both in the chemical storage area and at the custom engineered microfiltration system. So in that image, you can see a new flow meter, basket strainer, and butterfly valves, which have been installed. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that potable water piping going in and our new point of connection. Next slide, please. Here is an update on where we stand with the PLA as it relates to this specific project. So the Phase 2 expansion project is just one of 6 West Basin projects that fell within the PLA agreement that we hold with the Los Angeles and Orange Counties Building and Construction Trades Council and the signatory craft councils and union. So under that PLA, we define local residents in 2 categories. Tier 1 is a West Basin local resident. So those are US zip codes that overlap with the West Basin service area. And then we also track Tier 2 local workers, which are US zip codes that fall within LA County. We also track at-risk worker participation. And for that, you need to meet 2 of those following criteria, that being homeless, custodial single parent, receiving public assistance, a history with the criminal justice system, unemployment, meaning been unemployed, or having a gross household income below 50% of the median county income level. So the internal goals that West Basin set through the PLA for Tier 1, which is West Basin service area residents, we're striving for 30%. It's a pretty lofty goal, but as you can see there, we have an approved local percentage of 32.9%. And why we call it approved local is because the contractor has requested as many workers as they can get from the halls that fall within our service area. And I think today, it's exactly 17 or 18%. But because they've requested those from the union halls and just none are available at the time, we do count extra percentages. So the actual workforce percentage that is West Basin service area is more like 18%, but because the contractor is putting forth that good effort and requesting those workers, we have an approved local about 33%. On the at-risk side, we actually just added another at-risk worker, so I believe there's 2 on site right now. And of the total man hours provided on the project, 5.6% of those hours are coming from at-risk workers. And then on the apprenticeship side, the DIR actually sets a goal of 16.6% for apprenticeship participation. And you can see the project there is easily meeting that goal. And we have about 21% of the man hours on the project being provided from apprentices. So good stuff. Next slide, please. And here is a summary of those work hours broken down by Tier 1, Tier 2, and Division. The bulk of the man hours currently are coming out of Division 1, with the rest of those hours being shared between Division 2, 4, and 5. Next slide, please. This slide breaks down those man hours again, this time by craft. So you can see the bulk of the work coming out of carpenters and laborers, actually. Yeah, laborers, actually cement masons also, and haulers. Some interesting data. Next slide, please. And finally, this is just a panoramic image of the site as it looks presently. You can see the structure of the CMF has been erected for some time now, but all the mechanical installations within that canopy are now coming together. So that, if you have to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much. I think with that, we're done with all of the items for consideration today. We do not have a closed session, so any director comments? Director Williams, do you have any comments?
No, just that the great reports, excellent presentations.
And then I don't know if we have any board members left out there. If we do you have any comments? Yeah, hearing none. I don't have any additional comments, except to say thank you very much. Very nice day today, and we are adjourned till whenever our next meeting is in November.
Yes,
Monday.
thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez, Director Williams, and of course, staff. Thank you for the presentations.
This community meeting will be on Monday.